Today, we are going to be talking about the student achievement gap with Elizabeth Wangen,
Kayla, Erickson,
and Killeen, Landis. We will start with retaining students. Why do we decide that only some will succeed and others will not? Why do we define success in schools so narrowly? Why do the same students always end up the winners in most or all subjects? Why do we only want some to attain success so badly that we create a scarcity of something so sweet, so empowering, so ennobling, and so encouraging as success? On page 24 of Schools on Jewels. The decision to retain a student subsequently results in the student having more negative outcomes in all areas of academic achievement and in social and emotional areas of development, such as peer relationships, self-esteem, and classroom behavior. That's from page 95 of Berliner and Glass. Repetition is a commonly used method of treating individual deficits and problems. Not only is grade repetition an ineffective way to help students who are in need of help, but is also an expensive education system. Page 82 of Finished Lessons 2.0. We interviewed two different schools here in Duluth. Marshall, which is an independent school. That's a school that's independent in its finances and governs. It's usually not dependent on national or local government to finance its operations, nor reliant on taxpayer contributions. The other school we interviewed was Duluth East. Regarding if they should retain students, the executive assistant to the head of the dean stated, "Yes, if needed, we retain students. The students need to pass a certain level of proficiency." And Duluth East stated that if a student falls behind in credits, they can choose between credit recovery classes, online independent study classes, summer school, or Saturday school. This was from Principal Danette Sebo. And what Marshall needs to work on is helping other students catch up if they are falling behind. And Duluth East needs to improve on their transportation for students.
Next, we are going to be talking about socioeconomic status. Jewels on Schools says, as taxpayers, do we try to fund schools in such a way that every child receives the same amount of money? Or do we try to fund schools at a level that guarantees that every student learns at least a specified amount of learning? Do we aim toward equity or adequacy? Our founders believed that the success of a republic rests in the knowledge of its citizens on page 148. Berliner and Glass state that issues of family educational background and fiscal resources access, like transportation and opportunity, like museums, to supplement the home environment are important to consider in the education of all children, traditional and homeschooled. These factors strongly influence student outcome, on page 37. Posse Salwork said on Finished Lessons 2.0, former Washington, D.C. school chancellor Michelle Rhee said in Waiting for Superman in 2010, and what many other school reformers repeat in their change rhetoric. If this wasn't a myth, then the power of a school would indeed be stronger than children's family background or other out-of-school factors, and all children would achieve more if only there were good enough teachers in all schools, on page 134. Marshall claims that 45% of our students have some level of financial aid. Some students have completely paid for tuition provided by a donor. However, there is no significant difference in student achievement because those who get aid and those who can pay in full. Marshall works really well with students about their financial aid, and they also fundraise a large amount. Marshall could work on lowering their very strict acceptance guidelines, but because of their very strict acceptance guidelines, it also creates a smaller achievement gap. Duluth East said that we combat different socioeconomic statuses with programs like Saturday School, WIN, which stands for What I Need, and CORE, which is Help for Ninth Graders. Duluth combats and helps students that have a lower socioeconomic status with programs like Saturday School and CORE, but they could work on transportation to get to the school.
Next, I will discuss about class size. I also hope schedules provide pathways for collaboration and cooperation between buildings, and that it helps to redistribute students to reduce the enormous class sizes that are choking systems. Page 142 joules on schools. Both sides of the class size debate use student achievement in the argument. Those arguing for smaller class sizes assert that they contribute to increased student achievement as well as some additional desirable long-term outcomes, while those arguing against a reduction in class size maintain that smaller classes are too closely and that the research in support of smaller class sizes is equivocal. Page 89, Berliner and Glass. Schools are typically small, with class sizes ranging from 15 to 25 students. In 2014, 23% of Finnish comprehensive schools had fewer than 50 pupils. Just 7% of schools had more than 500 pupils. In other words, Finnish schools are rather small by international standards. Finnish Lessons 2.0. 55 students in the building total. The class size here helps teachers to get to know the students. The Duluth East principal stated, classes can have up to 42 students, although the average is closer to 35 students, with as little as 2 in Mandarin and Ojibwe. Marshall has very small class sizes, and that helps to create an environment for very successful students, but the reason that they're able to maintain this success rate is by accepting a very limited number of students. While for Duluth East, it is the opposite. It has very large class sizes, and while this could create student achievement gaps, they have many programs to help combat this. But this aside, they should work on creating smaller class sizes by hiring more teachers or by having more teacher aides.
To wrap up, Marshall is an independent school that claims to retain students if they fail. 45% of students have some sort of financial aid and an 11-to-1 ratio of students to teachers. They have stated that they don't have an achievement gap because they allow students with high grades only. To get into Marshall, a student must submit an essay, conduct an interview, submit old GPAs, and take an exam to gain entrance into such an elite school. Marshall is an independent 4 through 12 school that focuses on academic excellence and sits atop a hill. Go Hilltoppers! Duluth East is a public school that puts in larger amounts of effort to reduce retaining students. Their socioeconomic status contains a smaller gap because they are on the east side of Duluth and with a class size of around 35 students. Duluth East helps to nourish the individual that could provide better transportation for students. Duluth East is a public 9 through 12 school that focuses on obtaining student readiness for their future. Go Greyhounds!